But first, when Lenny Bannon's father, Bernard, began showing signs of dementia, little did the family know it wasn't just his health that he was battling. His father was a target of junk mail scammers who had managed to scam him out of £70,000.
Sadly, Lenny and his wife, Pat, didn't realise the full extent of the nightmare until after his death, and they join us now. And thank you very much indeed.
It's good to be here.
What sort of a guy was Bernard? Because he was a war hero, wasn't he?
He was. He was a man's man.
Yeah.
In every way. You know, he liked to go to the pub, he liked to meet his friends and have a drink and talk, you know.
And so...
mostly about the war and myself.
Yeah. Well, he had quite some stories from that, didn't he? It was around 7 to 8 years before he passed away that he began displaying signs of dementia. And you think that it was around about this time as well that the scams began. How do you think he got caught up in this?
I don't know. It started somewhere along the line where he's obviously sent for something online and he didn't really know about using the card properly on the phone.
Right.
Because he was totally deaf. And he didn't have much eyesight, did he, at the time?
No, he needed cataract operation. So, but the other thing about it was he used to buy books online, not online because he didn't know, but he used to buy books, and I think it started there because, of course, when you give your bank details, so when we really discovered the horrendous amount of mail and parcels and things, you'd say to him, "What's all this? Where's this come from? What? I don't know. I don't know. They just send me. They just send them. Not
so
realising.
you get into this vicious sort of cycle in a way. As soon as they've got your bank details, and as soon as you're on this list of somebody who is giving money over, then they keep coming for you and keep coming for you.
Yes, they do.
It's the worst thing you could ever do, I think, is give your card details out over the phone to anyone.
He went into hospital, I think in sort of 2015, and you went round to his house. And then you could see...
Discovered the parcels.
The parcels that
stashed away everywhere.
I mean, eventually that would take 3 wheelie bins to throw all the rubbish away.
Well, these parcels...
That was only the mail, Phil. That wasn't the parcels. The parcels were, when we emptied his house, were 2 days of packing everything up. It was horrendous.
So what was in the parcel? What was he being sent?
There's nothing in the parcels that he would have ordered of being sane mind. Like ladies' hand creams and things like that. Washing up liquids.
Bottles of black medicine. We don't know what that was. Would you take it?
Stale biscuits, stale cakes, all from France.
And he didn't talk to you about any of this?
No. He got very secretive.
Very secretive?
Yeah. He would shred everything.
Do you think he realised that something was wrong, but bearing in mind that we're talking about an elderly gentleman with dementia, that he realised something was wrong and was too embarrassed to say anything to you?
I've often thought this because we found that in 26 he'd been scammed out of 20,000. Well, we presume he was scammed out
at that point.
Because he had 2 accounts with 2 different banks. He'd taken £20,000 out of one bank and paid out 2 cheques in another bank for £10,000 each. And, of course, when we had the cheque numbers, and when we got in touch with the bank, they said they couldn't go back that far. Now, in this modern day and age, I could hear everything on microfilm.
Well, he'd ended up on the... And you found out later it's called the suckers list. People who are easy prey. And the stat, every year, scam mail costs us in Britain between £5 billion and £10 billion. Average victim is aged 75. On average, they lose about £3,500. Only 5% of these types of scams are reported, and it could be because the victims are ashamed or they're frightened of the scammers. What he'd done, he got locked into this dreadful pattern of... He didn't know that he was actually paying for the stuff that was happening. They were just taking money out of his account.
That's right. And I told the Ombudsman that, but they wouldn't have it.
You went to the bank. And when you told the bank what... Was this after his death?
No. Before his death in 2014, I went to the bank and I explained everything to them about my father, you know. And he said, well, come down. They made another appointment for me. We went down, we seen the bank manager's assistant, and she got the thing up online. And she said, well, all I can tell you is when your dad joined this bank, he had in excess of £120,000. I said, well, that's good. What's he got now? She said, less than 18.
My goodness
me. And I said, that's unbelievable. I said, well, where's it all going? I said, it's an old man who lives on his own. You know, he doesn't spend anything on himself.
So what do you make of these companies then that target vulnerable people like your father?
I'd like to lynch every one of them. I would. I'd like to shoot them.
They don't care. I mean, they obviously go after the most vulnerable in society, the most, you know, and they, like him, they probably wouldn't even tell their relatives unless their relatives are on top of it. But you see, he was secretive. We couldn't even find a bank statement or anything, could we?
No.
I would try and find.
But when you went to the bank, and you approached the bank and said, "This is what's happening. He's being scammed. His money is essentially being stolen."
They knew.
What did they say?
Right.
What did they do?
The very next day we went down the bank, because we only seen the assistant who told us about the loss. The very next day we went down, and I said to the manager right away, I never had no jurisdictions to stop any mail or anything or any...
No, he wasn't a bank. He didn't have that.
I didn't have anything.
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney. I said, everything's got to stop except these direct debits, i.e. for his facilities and that, you know, 5 or 6. And I said, anything else has got to be considered as a scam. Just stop it. And he did. And I've got all his bank records there. And you can see from the day when I stopped it, his bank account went into the ascendancy. So much so, he had less than 7,000. And it went up in the...
So you did manage to stop it from happening. The bank were helpful in that respect, that they stopped it from happening.
But they were also in denial, Phil. You wouldn't have it that he'd been scammed. He threw all kinds of obstacles in my way.
We've hit a brick wall in every direction with them and the Ombudsman. But the thing was, I know for a fact he had a favourite girl in the bank, and he knew about her. He knew. No, I know. He knew about her family. He used to take chocolates to her, all these horrible sweets probably. But when I said to her about the, you know, and she just said, oh, I know. She said, as many of those letters you've got, because you showed her them, as many of those letters you've got, I've got the same amount in our the safe.
Right.
She knew.
I think he was thinking it was the post office in the end,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, let's... Martin Lewis is just standing by. He's got some warnings about this. Martin, I mean, you've been listening to this story. What do you make of it?
Do you want to know? I wish it was the first time I'd heard a shocking, horrible story like this. I'm afraid it isn't. There's a charity called Think Jessica, a woman there whose mother went through exactly the same thing. And the problem with these scammers, this vulture crime as it's known, is the victim, who's generally an elderly, vulnerable person who's no longer quite the person that they were, they often actually start to believe the scammers more than their own family. They start to feel that the scammers are their friends. They're constantly contacting them. They're saying, well, these people tell me it's true and they've sent me things through. And they get so engrossed and entrenched in the whole thing, it is very difficult to break that circle. And the scam protection in this country is nowhere near good enough at the moment. Action fraud are hideously under-resourced. I know with the separate thing, with the you'll know about the scams involving me about Bitcoin, the fake Bitcoin ads with me. Reporting them to action fraud generally doesn't work that well because there is no resources to deal with it. So what I would say to anybody out there, especially if you have a vulnerable or elderly relative who you care for, if you start to see lots of this junk mail, if they're starting to send cheques to people who you don't know on a regular basis for pay for things that you can't work through, then see that as a warning sign, and I would direct you to the Think Jessica charity that has lots of good resource and information to be able to help on these type of issues.
Well, but Lenny's just passed over this.
I was going to mention them.
Yeah, you passed it over.
Because they're very good.
Because the thing is also, Martin, if you're still there, you can't get this money back. That's it. It's gone.
I think it's best to work from the principle that you won't get the money back. I'm not going to go quite as hard as to say in every circumstance you can't get the money back. There are people who do get money back in some eventualities, but in most cases you won't. So prevention is far better than cure. Look, I mean, I try not to get political in this show. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've been fighting scams involving me. Many people, I mean, people are duped with my face and name. With Holly, I know you've been involved in it as well, not scamming, being duped in that way.
We both have. Our faces have been used for online Facebook ads and stuff for things that we know nothing about.
Emailed with my face on about Bitcoin codes and Bitcoin scams that are nothing to do with me, with a picture saying I endorse them or I'm involved in them. And look, the problem is, Our country has had this lacuna of regulation and law for the past 3 or 4 years. We all know why. When you're trying to get change to keep up with the modern technology and the way people are scamming and trying to get politicians to regulate, you can't, because time is being taken up by something else, and there are lots of victims out there. So we are just sitting and waiting with regulations, laws and protections that are not up to speed, are not protecting people, leaving vulnerable and non-vulnerable people being hurt, and it is deeply frustrating. I wish I could give you an answer.
Okay.
Well, I know that the Royal Mail has, they've said to us they've invested significant time and resources into creating robust processes. They've managed to stop millions of scam emails. They pulp them, and then if they've raised any money from it, they give that to agencies who support the victims of scam mail. And the Ombudsman, and it's funny, you say go to the Ombudsman.
Yeah.
You've had no joy whatsoever from the Ombudsman.
No.
But is it because you want to try and get money back?
No, we were more or less forced onto the Ombudsman by the bank's incapability to get the fraud investigation going.
Yeah.
3 times we went to 3 different banks, and every time there was something wrong, And
I should just say that TSB, they've said, we're sorry our customer was a victim of fraud. As soon as we were alerted to concerns by his son, we cancelled the customer card and issued a new one. We also refunded possible fraudulent transactions onto the customer's account.
£277?
that was after 2014 when we brought it to the bank.
For their attention,
Those 6 payments, what they're talking about, should never have gone through anyway. They were on the stop list.
What would you
So they
like...
basically give me money back, so
That
they
they
never
should
give us a
Finally,
penny.
what would you like to see done?
Justice.
I'd like to...
Justice.
Justice, yeah. I'd like to
Because
see the
I must
company
tell
back.
you this, Lenny's dad was a very, very clever man. He was a mathematician. He was at the top of his tree when he was, in his working career. He worked with city architects. He was offered to build the Barbican.
A bright man.
A
Yeah, he
very
was a very
clever
bright
man.
man.
He was
very
head
clever
boy
man.
to school when kids didn't have shoes. He was a very clever man. If this had been you doing it, he'd have been calling you all the soft things going,
Yeah.
Well, thank you for highlighting it.
Yes,
Thank you for
absolutely.
coming in
Thank you for your
today.
time today. All
You're
right.
welcome.
Nice to meet you both.